be recorded.
Bye.
Now we're good. Now we're good.
Okay, does anybody have any questions about any contracts or any situations that they've had lately?
So not really a question, but maybe we can go through kind of what Sydney and Mike were talking about earlier today about buyer credit or seller credits.
Yeah. So I know, because that was a really fast conversation about it, and we were having kind of side conversations back where we were. So what they're talking about is the closing costs. So the closing costs on the 22A financing addendum. So most of you guys, I guess, minus like 2 people on here, haven't been in the industry for very long to even really know what the closing costs are, right? Because we've all put 0 in there for so long because you had to in order to get an offer accepted. So it's on the second page of the financing addendum, and I can go ahead and open that up so then I can share screen with you. Give me just a sec. So then you guys can see what I'm talking about. Okay, can you guys see this? Ooh, it changed.
Oh, look at that.
They've been changing stuff the whole time. It's kind of fun. Okay, so on the financing addendum, on page 2, so the loan cost provision. So this is where you're going to put in the dollar amount or the percentage. Back in the day, we used to do a percentage. It used to be 1 or 2% of the purchase price. I recommend always asking your lender. So don't put a number in there unless you've talked to your lender about it. Because if you put $5,000 in there and closing costs are going to be $10,000, your buyers are going to be pissed, right? Because they have to come up with an additional $5,000. The closing costs are not they're not the same every time, I guess is what I'm trying to say. They always change. So before you say what's a typical number you put in there, I'm going to say I don't know. And the reason is because it changes with when taxes are paid. So closing costs include the prorated taxes. So taxes are paid in June, October and April.
Yeah.
I think. And so at different times, it's going to be a lot less and a lot more based on the prorated. So when I say 5,000 or 10,000, there really can be that big of a swing for the closing costs. So just make sure and ask your lender. So what Sydney and Michael were talking about was, we're still in a hot market, right? Obviously. So what you want to do is talk to the seller. If you know that there's going to be, or not the seller, the listing agent, if you know there's going to be multiple offers, your buyer needs to have closing costs. What you're going to do is, let's say the offer or the purchase price is going to be $300,000. So what you're going to do is do the $300,000, figure out what the loan costs are going to be. So talk to the lender about it, what the loan costs are going to be. Let's say they're going to be $10,000. So then you're going to put your offer in at $310,000 and then put $10,000 of the closing costs here. So then the seller is netting the same amount of money. As a listing agent, this is very important conversation to have with your seller, because you can talk to them about, this is going to be the same amount netted, right? Because they're going to look at it and they're going to say, I'm not paying $10,000 at closing costs. Well, seller, you're still getting the exact same amount of money, right? That's actually not true, but you're getting somewhat of the same amount of money. One thing that you can do, who was I talking to about this? I can't remember who it was, but they had the seller say that they won't pay commission on loan costs provisions or lender closing costs. So what they did was that 300, because if you think about it, it's a percentage, right, of the commission. So it's 3%, let's just say, of 300,000 is going to be different than 3% of 310,000. Seller's still going to be paying more. So if you write it in there and say, commission shall be based upon the purchase price minus any lender's closing costs, then it would be 300,000 minus 10,000, right? And so then they're paying commission on the 300,000 and not, even though the purchase price is 310. Does that make sense? If you guys were all here, I could write it on a board so you could understand. But is everybody
Do
with
you want me
me?
to move your laptop for you?
No, it's all right.
I'll follow you around like a
Bueller?
camera crew.
Hello?
That makes sense to me.
Thank you. Amanda, does that make sense? Okay. Any more questions about that? Did that cover any questions that somebody might have? Kyle, you're the king of awesome questions. Do you have any
He
questions
is.
regarding that?
I got a really simple question. So when you go through and you do that, it's just as simple as telling the lender, hey, we have $10,000 in seller concessions. We want to apply those $10,000 to buy down the interest rate. Is it that simple?
So the lender's gonna see the purchase and sale agreement and they're going to decide where those costs go. So it's gonna go first to the closing costs and then it's gonna go to the prorated costs. And then it can go to the buying down of things. So it's kind of like a down payment, right? Or a earnest money. It depends on what you're gonna do. If you have zero down, if you have a zero down loan and you're asking for closing costs, earnest money would first go to the down payment, then it would go to closing costs, and then it's going to go to back into the buyer's pocket because there's nothing else to put it towards, right? Because buyers come into the table with $0. So it's going to be the lender that decides what happens with that money as far as paying down, because it could be you're getting 5,000 in closing costs and buyer says they can bring 3,000 to the table. So then it's going to depend on wherever the lender wants to put that stuff in there. But the lender is going to see that you're asking for closing costs. And hopefully you've had a conversation with them about it, right? Does that make sense?
It does. So it
Okay.
just really sounds like bring up, kind of paint the full picture to the lender up front and then allow them to figure out the details.
Right. And they're going to tell you whether or not it's a good idea to buy down the fees. Because sometimes it's not. Sometimes it doesn't make sense to buy stuff down. But that's a lender thing. That's where their expertise comes in. Any more questions about that?
I feel like this is maybe not relevant to exactly what you're talking about, but will you go back a little bit with the earnest money?
Yeah.
So earnest money will first go towards down payment and then go towards
Closing costs.
closing costs. Okay, so what if you're like doing the zero down, right?
Uh-huh.
The assistance with that, the down payment assistance, so you don't have to worry about that. And let's say the seller is taking care of closing costs, then earnest money is basically just going back.
Buyer will get a check at the
Closing?
signing, at closing, yeah.
Oh, okay,
I've had that happen a few times.
Yeah.
okay.
Did you guys hear the question that Sarah was asking? Okay. Yeah, so buyer will get a check back.
Okay.
Which is always nice. Any more questions about that kind of stuff, you guys? It is nice to get paid to buy your own house, yeah.
You need the updates to the bathroom or something.
Right, exactly. And I'll go down this rabbit hole. And that's when, typically whenever you have a zero down and you need closing costs, buyer doesn't have the money to put down. So if you ask them to put $500 in earnest money, they're gonna be like, "Ugh, I don't have it," right? So they're gonna kind of be freaking out about that. So that is where you get even more tricky, creative. That's the word I was looking for. Even more creative. And you would write in the earnest money, you would say that the earnest money is due at closing, right? So $500 earnest money due at closing means they're bringing $500 check to the closing table, but then they actually don't have to do it because they're going to be getting it back, right?
Instead of the 5,000 back, they'll get 4,500 because they have a $500 earnest money.
Right. Yeah. So then, because most buyers, and I've had this happen, so buyers don't have the money, right? If they're getting a zero down loan and getting closing costs, they don't have the money to put to earnest money for 45 days. Most of them anyway. So that's how you would do that, is it'll be due on closing. Now, if the sale fails, this is something to keep in mind if you do this. If the sale fails at the fault of the buyer, buyer is responsible for coming up with that $500. Does that make sense? Go ahead, Kyle.
So I've got a question kind of on the fiduciary aspect of representing a buyer who's struggling to make a $500 payment towards earnest money. You know, when you own your own house, you know, a $500 pay repair, you know, those can come up, you know, those can come up. So as a fiduciary to this buyer, you know, it kind of sounds like it's a gray area on this buyer buying this house is their best interest. You know, what's your take on that?
So a couple of different things. Right now, I know people that are paying more in rent than they are paying than I pay for my mortgage. And I bought my mortgage, or I bought my house last year. So there are people that are paying more for their rent than they are for the house that they're buying. So maybe they're actually saving money because they're not paying as much in rent. So that's the first thing. Second thing that you can do is if you're kind of like the Shipleys, for their closing gift, they give a home warranty. So at closing, they pay for a home warranty for their buyer. So if they're buying, obviously, it's probably going to be a lower end house that's maybe going to need some fixing up, right? So that could be something that you do is get a home warranty, negotiate it in the inspection, negotiate it in the offer, or you can pay for it. And then that's going to cover some of those big expensive items. So then they have time to save that money.
Got it. So it's kind of a case by case scenario. If you feel like you're setting your buyer up for success by purchasing this property, go for it. If you feel like you're setting them up for failure in a future foreclosure, you know, that's a different conversation.
Yeah, I don't know how you would have that conversation though. Like, I think it's that, like, if the buyers are choosing to do this, then that's up to them. It's not up to you. So I think that's a tough road to go down. I mean, I have sold a house to somebody and then they called me and they got pissed off because their mortgage went up because of taxes. Now, this is a good conversation to have with them. Anybody that's struggling with money, right? This payment, and it should be the lender that has this conversation, but we can and we should. If you're struggling and you're gonna be tight, know that your payment will probably end up increasing every year. Not by a lot, but maybe by a little bit because taxes increase. And so then they're going to take more money out of your payment and put it to the escrow account. So chances of your loan going up is probable. I'm not going to say a percentage because I don't know for sure, but because you can pay that difference. You get a letter that says you owe, I don't know, $1,000 for your escrow account unless you want your payments to go up, and then your payments will go up. Does that make sense? Okay.
It does.
Okay. Any more questions about that? Okay. Anybody else out there in Zoom land want to say anything? Logan, Monica, Diana, Lupita,
Come on, Zoomers.
Armando,
attention?
Sean, Maria. Yeah, I just called you all out.
Maybe a pop quiz.
On the
Why did
actual.
you?
What, Logan?
All right, no, fine. If you want to talk over me.
I
guess
wasn't
it's- yeah, whatever.
Maybe other
No.
family. Don't even maybe other family.
Kind of on what Kyle was saying. I understand trying to look out for your clients as much as possible. I totally understand that, but the bigger issue is would you be hurting them more in the long run by letting them stay renting, and maybe they can't afford their rent in a year, but they could have afforded their house in a year.
Right.
So that's, I would rather just get them the best deal possible that you can and help them out where you can. I mean, I helped install the floors for my clients that I just sold a house to and stuff like that. Like, there's other stuff that you can do that isn't gonna, financially burden you, but it can help them out in the long run, and it gets you a good rep for future clients as well. And it only costs you time, which time is money, but still, like, helping out those people will make them happy to refer you in the long run. So
Yeah, set you up for, you set them up for success by letting them know all the variables, what can happen, and the things that they can do to be successful, right? I mean, the number of people that lost their houses in 2008, and it wasn't their fault, you know, they trusted everybody else. We don't know what's coming down the line. For all we know, another boom can happen or another crash can happen, and we could all be struggling to pay our mortgages and rent and all that stuff. So you never really know. You can't
I'm
tell
gonna buy Stephanie's house.
what?
What?
What'd you
I
say?
didn't- What?
Huh?
I-
Armando, is that how you bought your house?
Yeah, that first time. But what I thought was funny is that the help I needed for closing cost, the appraisal came in right at the like exact number, and I was like, that's funny. Like that was a very specific number. You
Yeah,
know?
that can happen for sure. I had one come in $1,000 less than asking price, and I called the appraiser and I was like, seriously? And he's like, oh, sorry, I'll change that. I was like, yes. Kathy, it's good to see your face. I haven't seen you in forever. I know you can't, I don't think you have the ability to talk, but I just want to say that. She used to come in all the time and I haven't seen her.
Oh, yeah, I can talk real good.
You can't talk.
I had to change computers. Mine
Oh,
froze
okay.
up. So, but yeah, I've been for, just quarantining in place and hiding. I can't bring anything home. So,
Yeah. That makes sense.
yeah, so
Well, thank you for joining us. It's good to see you.
I'll try to join more often.
I love it. Let us know if you need anything.
Less snow would be good. A lot
Yeah.
less.
No
We couldn't
kidding.
even get out of our house for almost 2 days
Oh my gosh.
because it was so bad up here.
The snow shovel king, send him. her
Just
way.
send Logan. All right, guys. Do you have any more questions about anything else? Okay, I'm gonna move on to closing and possession. I think that we had this conversation a couple of weeks ago, but it's been a couple of weeks. Keep in mind that the closing and the possession can be at 2 different times. Remember we had this, yeah, we did. Most of you weren't here though. Possession is at 9 p.m. on the day of closing unless otherwise specified. So on the purchase and sale agreement, if you don't want to close at 9 p.m., then you can put on closing at 3, 4, 5. So it's a good thing to keep in mind to tell both your sellers and your buyers that technically buyers, you can't get in until 9 p.m. and technically sellers, you have until 9 p.m. to get out. Okay. If the sellers give you the keys earlier than 9 p.m., which most of them do, right? It's supposed to be in writing. This is me telling you it needs to be in writing. Okay, that's as far as I'm going with that. Yeah, Monica, it's a good thing to know because it's gonna take one time for the sellers to last until 9 p.m. and the buyers are gonna be pissed. And you might have done a great job through the whole process as a buyer's agent until that end, and then they're gonna be really, really mad. And then they're gonna get that nasty review. Right? Any questions about that? Okay. So remember about the walkthrough, you guys. I've had quite a few people lately that have not done walkthroughs on houses, and it's turned out to eat them in the hiney. Kyle's like, yep. I've also had people do walkthroughs, and it saved a lot of heartache. In fact, especially this time of year, note as listing agents, if you have vacant properties, then you need to make sure and go and check on them and make sure the heat is left on and make sure the water hasn't busted.
I just got that call today on a condo.
Yeah, another one of our agents drove up north to check on to do a walkthrough for a house. It was flooded. Yeah, and thank goodness they did that walkthrough, right? So what are you gonna do about the condo?
The HOA already went in. They were checking apartments to make sure that everything, or condos to make sure everything was, and they went in and they called me this morning and they said, hey, the heat was off.
Yeah,
I was like, "Oh, okay.
yeah. So if you're a listing agent and you have a vacant house, go check on it. ASAP, hopefully. The one thing that I did learn during this class was if you don't do an inspection, then and you do a walkthrough, and let's say the heat's not working, there's no, because technically the house is supposed to be in the same repair as it was whenever you did the first walkthrough or the inspection, right? If you don't do an inspection and you do a walkthrough and the heat's not working, how do you know it was working when you put the offer in on the house versus when you did the walkthrough? Right? Especially if you put an offer on the house in September and then you're closing in December. I don't know, that's a long time, but whatever. You're not going to know, right? So you can't go back to the seller and say, hey, seller, the heat's not working. What are you going to do about it? And they're going to be like, well, it wasn't really working before, so it sucks to be you, right?
Where
Yeah.
does form 17 come in on that?
That's a good question. Maybe you could get out of it, but it would have to be trying to sue, or going after. I mean, what's the repercussions? You might be able to get out of the deal, but you're out, in this case, 3 months and however much money, right? Like for the appraisal, if they have an appraisal. So, I mean, yes, you probably could get out of it based on that, but you're not going to have any money back unless you sue. So I'm not telling you to do an inspection, but I am telling you to do an inspection. I know it's hard to do it, you guys, especially right now. It's like, it's hard because it's what you should do versus what's realistic. So just keep that in mind. You know, maybe do your own buyer inspection kind of thing. You know, if you're gonna do it, walk through and make sure that to feel the heat or whatever. Does that make sense?
You can bring an inspector to a showing, right? Or no?
You have to have permission.
You have to have permission.
Yeah.
Pre-inspection.
Yeah.
whatever.
Yep. All right. Any more questions on that? Okay. Propane tanks. Make sure that if your seller has a propane tank, that they get somebody out there to check the level, and then they can get reimbursed for the amount of propane that's still in the tank. So that'll be at closing. Propane is expensive. If you have a giant tank and you don't know if it's full or empty and you just filled it up, it's nice to be able to do that. But it's the seller's responsibility to get somebody out there, measure it, and then send those documents to the title company / your responsibility as a listing agent. Okay. Look at us just moving right along.
No.
Form 22K, that's the identification of utilities. We always check that as buyer's agents. It's not hard to fill it out, right? In fact, you're doing your buyers a disservice by not filling it out. So this is me saying, don't be lazy and fill it out whenever you write your offer. It's not that hard. In fact, quite a few of us already have the list of utility companies for each individual place, right? So just fill it out. It's benefit for your buyer. If you don't fill it out, then yes, technically the sellers and the listing agent need to fill it out, but sometimes they don't. So just do it.
Or as a listing agent, do it. So
Or as a listing agent, do it. I do. I fill it out. I have my sellers look at it. I have my sellers initial it, and then I upload it to the MLS. Yeah. Thank you for that, Emily. You guys know what the 22K does, right? You know why we use it? Not everybody at once. No, okay. The 22K is the identification of utilities, and this makes sure that all of the utilities are up to date that are lienable, right? So I think there's only 1 or 2 lienable utilities that we use. I like to fill it all out so that way my buyers know who to call to switch the utilities in. In fact, I've had this happen before. I was a listing agent. The buyer's agent wrote an offer and said they waived the utility thing. We got to closing, we closed, and then all of a sudden I get a call that says, hey, there's a $500 bill for, I think it was power. I don't remember. Anyway, there was a $500 bill and your buyer didn't pay it. And I said, well, you didn't do the identification of utilities. Like, this is on you. I said, I can try to call them and say, you know, what's going on, but this is on you. So luckily my sellers were cool and they ended up paying it, but they didn't have to, because it's the buyer's responsibility to make sure that they do the identification of utilities and call and check in. I always tell my buyers, so in my sheet that I send over, I tell my buyers, 2 or 3 days before closing, I send them an email and I say, call the utility companies that are on the 22K, right? They have it. And make sure that all of the utilities are up to date and tell them that you are moving in to switch the utilities into your name a couple days beforehand. That's the best case scenario. Because technically the title company is supposed to call the utilities and make sure that everything's up to date if it's a lienable one. They're not going to call all of them. They're only going to call the lienable utilities. Does that make sense? Okay. Any questions about that? These are a lively group. Computation of time.
This one's my favorite. Yeah.
Okay, computation of time. If it's 5 days or less,
Just so you know.
do we count weekends and holidays?
No, well, wait.
They can't, and things cannot end on a weekend or holiday.
That's not what I asked.
What did you ask?
5 days or less,
No.
do we count weekends or holidays? No, correct. 6 days, do we count weekends or holidays?
Yes, but can't land on one.
There you are. Did you guys hear that? Okay. So, somebody put a closing date on January 31st. Is January 31st a holiday?
Martin Luther King? No.
January 31st?
January 31st. It is a holiday. So what you do is you go to the WAC. So is it RCW or the WAC? So let me, huh?
I don't see it on my calendar. It's a holiday.
It December 31st is a holiday.
Oh, you said
You
January.
said
31st.
January 31st.
sorry, guys.
I was all confused.
I did, well, so I accidentally put one on.
Wait, New Year's Eve. is a
December
holiday?
Oh,
December 31st is a holiday. Let me show you if you're ever wondering about what if you're questioning, is this a holiday? Is this not a holiday? Computation. So I went to the Form 21, the purchase and sale agreement, which is where you're always going to find all of your answers, right? So you go down here to the computation of time, and right here it says, this is the 9 p.m. thing, right? So this is the thing that I was talking about earlier. And then right here it says to go to RCW.1.16.050, and that's going to tell you whether or not it's a holiday. And you can literally just Google that. You can just type in RCW 1.16.050, and that's going to tell you what classifies as a holiday. You're going to look like a dummy if you put a holiday down, or if you put to close on a holiday and then you get the call that says, hey, this is a holiday, we can't close on this day, right? And then you're like, dang it. I've done it too, like it happens, but it's nice to don't just count the days, look at the calendar of where you're putting the date of closing, right? Inspection. So let's say you do a 5-day inspection contingency. And mutual acceptance is on Tuesday. What day is provided there's no holidays, what day is the inspection due?
Following Tuesday.
5-day inspection contingency.
So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday.
No, because it's 5. 5 days.
Yeah, but
doesn't-
5 days,
Amanda?
it doesn't start on the mutual.
Monday,
aid,
right.
it's the day after mutual aid.
Monica, what do you say?
Monday?
Oh, because it's 5 days,
Yeah, so it would be Tuesday.
but you still can't.
Okay, Tuesday, on the
Yeah.
18th,
Yeah.
because the weekend days don't count on a 5
Right.
day or less.
So mutual acceptance is Tuesday, day 1 is Wednesday, day 2 is Thursday, day 3 is Friday, day
Tu-
4 is Monday, day 5 is Tuesday. Okay? 10-day inspection contingency, mutual acceptance is a Tuesday. Friday?
Yeah, the 21st.
Okay, we're all getting Friday. Somebody asked me this not too long ago. The financing addendum, you check the box that says 21 days. To when the seller can send you the form to terminate, right? 21 days. Somebody asked me if those 21 days included weekends or holidays. What did I say?
Yes.
Yeah, because it's over 5 days. It just cannot end on a weekend or holiday. And you guys, there are experienced agents that argue on the inspection contingency, especially if it ends on a Sunday and they say, nope, you didn't get it in time. I have literally had many arguments with agents that have been in this industry for a long time about this. It cannot end on Sunday. It automatically goes to Monday. Okay. Do we have any questions about that? It's not a dumb question if you have a question.
No, but that was the one that we had, Stephanie, that my buyers after, what are we at, 10 and a half months, finally got their earnest money back.
Because of the inspection?
Well, yeah, because of that time frame there from the time the inspection was done and then receiving the earnest money, which it fell on that weekend. And so it happened to be that, well, it wasn't that following Monday because that Monday was a holiday, which moved it to Tuesday.
Right.
Yeah.
And that can completely confuse people.
Exactly.
The other thing that a lot of new agents ask me is, do you have to have the inspection done within that time frame? The answer is yes. So you not only have to have it done, but you have to respond, right? So that 10-day period is get the inspection done and respond by that time. So you have to do both. One thing that I like to do if I'm writing an offer, especially in a multiple offer situation, and I want my buyers to use an inspector, and they say yes, they'll use an inspector. I'll call my inspector and I'll say, hey, can we get on, when's the soonest we can get on your calendar? I will schedule it. I will put it on the calendar and I will tell the listing agent, we already have the inspection scheduled and we're ready to go. So then you can shorten that time frame for the inspection because you already have it scheduled and you're not going to be waiting.
I had a listing that the buyer had an inspector in the same day we were mutual.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did you guys hear that? Yeah.
Just to clarify, nothing can ever end on a weekend or holiday, right?
Except possession date.
Except possession date.
Except for possession, yeah, okay.
Yeah. So you guys, whenever I argue with people about this, I always come to the computation of time and I literally read it to them, right? Any specified period of 5 days or less, except for any time period relating to the possession date, shall not include Saturdays, Sundays, or legal holidays. If the parties agree that an event will occur on a specific calendar date, that event shall occur on that date, except for the closing date, which if it falls on a Saturday, Sunday, legal holiday, goes to the next county recording office close date. So if you say, in the inspection period, if you don't put 10 days, if you say it's due on, what's Saturday? What's the date this Saturday?
15th.
The 15th. If you say the inspection is due January 15th, it is due January 15th. So if you put a specific date, that day is due. Okay, so if you put 10 days, it can't end on a weekend or holiday. If you put a specific date, it can.
Is there a spot to put up a specific date?
Yeah, you could cross it out and put,
Like,
or you could do it on the 22D at the bottom on number 12 and say inspection shall be due on
okay.
whatever the date is.
Yeah.
Any questions about that, you guys? Does anybody know what time we started?
About 11:40.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we're good on time. Any more questions on computation of time? Yes, Kyle.
So mine's not on computation of time, it's on early possession. We can circle
Okay.
back to this if someone else has a question.
They're not speaking up. Go for it.
Okay, if there's say it's a 45-day close and the seller wants to, they want as quick of a close as possible. They're a house flipper, it's cold outside, they don't want the pipes to freeze, yada, yada, yada. Someone with typical financing, it's like a 45-day close. Let's say we offered a 10-day possession, after mutual acceptance. What other paperwork is required to make that official and legit?
That's a great question. Ah, crap. Closing and possession. So this is where people don't ever read the forms, which is why I tell you guys to read the forms. What'd you say? Fill in the blanks, yeah. So it says again, we're back on the form 21, right? So it says, here's the buyer reserves the right to walk through the property within 5 days of closing to verify that seller has maintained the property and systems appliances as required by this paragraph. Seller shall not enter into or modify existing leases or rental agreements, blah, 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 blah. Property which have terms extended beyond the closing without first obtaining buyer's consent, which shall not be okay, here it is. If possession transfers at a time other than closing, the parties shall execute Northwest MLS Form 65A or Northwest MLS Form 65B or alternative rental agreements, and are advised of the need to contact their representative insurance companies to assure appropriate hazard and liability insurance policies are in place. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago when we were doing this, when I was going through my paperwork on this. We touched it quite a bit. You are doing your buyers a disservice by saying, in fact, you're not doing a good job. You're failing as an agent. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to say that. If you don't put the 65A and 60 or 65B in there when you write the offer, knowing you're not going to be closing or getting possession on the closing day, you are doing it wrong if you don't include it. So if you're going to extend or do early possession, you have to include the 65A or 65B. Okay, and when you do the 65A or 65B, which I hate doing it because it doesn't make any, it's scary. You have to do the attorney review, and you have to push the attorney review. You can't just stick it in the forms and say sign. You need to say, this is dangerous. This is not a good idea. And here's why, right? Because if the seller gives you early occupancy as the buyer can't close. How is seller getting the buyer out? They have to evict them. And we all know what that looks like, right? That takes a hot minute, especially right now. If as a buyer, you're doing a late possession and allowing the seller to stay in there, A, will your insurance cover it? B, the big one is, did you say that you're occupying the property whenever you close the deal? Did you sign that piece of paper if one of a million papers that you sign whenever you're closing your house that says, I am occupying the property? Because if you did, you just created fraud, right? Because you're not occupying the property. You're letting the seller occupy the property after closing. You own it. and you sign something saying that you're occupying that property. So there's a first problem. Second problem is, again, what if seller doesn't get out?
Well, and or what if they do damage to the property after it's technically yours? What's your recourse to go back to them and have them fix what it is that they damaged?
Right, right. And I know that we covered this. I think Amanda and maybe Armando was on this call. I can't remember. But when you do it, when you fill out the 65A or 65B, always put an amount in there of the rent. Do not put zero, right? Because if you're gonna do it, right, it's gonna happen. It's not a never gonna happen situation. It's gonna happen, unfortunately. But if you do it and you put $0 for rent in there, you have zero recourse for getting money back if they don't move out. So what you would do is, either way, right? You're gonna put an amount in there and you're gonna say $2,500, I don't know, whatever fair market rent is a month, but not due until a specific date. And that date is gonna be whatever you expect the possession date to be. So closing is on the 10th and you're giving late possession until the 15th, right? So you're gonna say that $2,500 is due, but not until the 15th. So then if they don't move out on the 15th, then your recourse is that you can go back and get that $2,500 if they stay in for months and months and months. So that's the only recourse the buyers have, is if they put in, or sellers too, is if they put in an amount of money, because then they can go after that amount of money. If you put $0 in there, there's no money to go after, so you can't get it. Does that make sense? I know it's a heavy topic, but I hate seeing the 65As and 65Bs. But if you have to, you have to. I get it, but just make sure that you tell your buyers or sellers what, I know, Logan, I'm with you. Make sure you tell your buyers or sellers what the problem is if they do it. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
So following that conversation of the downsides of doing this, would you recommend, and let's say they want to move forward with that, would you recommend putting any money to be placed towards, the rent to or the rent back inside an escrow account, contingent on the property closing? Like, say if it's an early possession.
Early possession, escrow wouldn't hold it. Hold on, let me think this through.
I'm just wondering if that's a possibility, because that would mean that the sellers would only get their early possession money if they close. And so they have to provide, they have to follow through with closing on it for them to get that, rent. At least that's how it's going through in my mind. I know I'm new at this.
So that's not early possession, that would be late possession. In which case you could have escrow hold it. Early possession, I think the only way would be to not close. If you're a seller and you allow early possession, buyer moves in. Wait, what are you asking?
One more time.
I'm asking if there's going to be money transferred as a result of an early or late possession, would you recommend that money be held in an escrow account to hold the other party accountable for performing on their side of the contract? Or would you just have the money go directly to the other party? And,
if I'm the party that is allowing an early possession or a late possession, so early possession seller, late possession buyer, if I'm the party that's allowing that, I'm gonna want that money. Most people are gonna say, and it all depends, right? Because a lot of people are gonna say you can stay in it for a day or two at no cost. Some people are gonna say, no, I want money for it. Some people are gonna say it's gonna cost me money to do it. So if money is being exchanged for early possession or late possession, I want that money. I don't want it in an escrow account. You say you're paying me, you're gonna pay me that money. And I'm gonna want it now, not down the road. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it kind of does. It just really sounds like it's the negotiable term of the contract and each one's going to be on a case by case basis.
It
And it's
is,
just a
yeah,
huge
because
gray
if
area
you
that
have a
this is in.
situation where somebody's been delaying the closing because of one thing or another and delaying and delaying and delaying. You know, and then they want early possession, seller's gonna want money for that, right? Like, listen, I've extended for this amount of time or whatever the circumstances might be, they're gonna want money for it. And most situations it's not gonna be that long, right? There are special scenarios where it's gonna be a month of early possession or a month of late possession. In which case you're probably gonna want money for it because you're paying mortgage or the rent, right? So you're gonna want that money for it. If it's only a day or two, most people are gonna be like, no, it's fine, just go ahead. But make sure you don't put $0 in there. Make sure I know, Logan, I know, I hate it. I hate the forms. We shouldn't even know about them, but we do. And it's a thing. Every scenario is different. Go ahead, Sean.
And seriously utilize that attorney review. You know, that's
Yeah.
huge in this scenario. Like, have an attorney look this over in any scenario where you're, you know, transferring money either for early occupancy or late. I would have an attorney look at it.
Well, and also an attorney is probably going to scare the crap out of whoever's doing it. So maybe they'll talk him out of it. Maybe somebody will listen to an attorney, and if they don't listen to us, we can be like, okay, go talk to your attorney. And they'll be like, no way, don't do it. Especially in this crazy state of Washington where they're allowing, you know, all this crazy rent stuff going on. Any more questions about that? So one more thing about the computation of time. If you're doing like on the evidence of funds, the 10 days prior to closing, right? So if you're going backwards, then you always advance forward. So it also can't end on a weekend or holiday. So if it's if it's going to end on the 10th day, then you go forward. So it'd only be 9 days. So if the 10th day is a Sunday, then the 9th day is where you would go to. So you wouldn't go to day 11, 12, or 13.
It doesn't go backwards.
It doesn't go backwards. You always advance forward.
Even though the earnest, what was it, earnest money, or what did you?
It would be the evidence of funds.
Evidence
So
funds,
it's the
at least, yeah.
5 days. So
So
like
if it's going backwards.
right,
Then you go forwards based off of whatever day it lands on.
right. So if day 10 is Sunday, going backwards, then you would actually be doing the evidence of funds on day 9 because it's a Monday. Does that make sense? I have a thing here, but I don't know if you guys are gonna be able to see it.
It's a little less. Okay, so like, let's say closing's on the 30th, you have until the 20th. or
Can you
like,
guys see
you have
that?
Until the 20th to do other.
Probably not. Okay.
20th is a Sunday, so it has to be the 21st. So it's 9 days instead of that 10 days.
Oh, because you
Because
have
you
to
have
have
to move
evidence from
forward.
within 10 days of closing.
Of closing.
Right.
So you go backwards from closing.
So if
then
you're
it
going
lands on a
backwards
weekend,
from
you go forward.
closing, day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, you end on a Sunday. You can't end on a Sunday. So then you're gonna go to day 9. So you always move forward to closing. Okay. I believe oh, the information verification period. You guys, I'm sorry, I got really excited about that. At the bottom of the purchase and sale agreement, there's the information verification period. Let me share this real quick. Oh, shoot fire. Okay. Let me get down to it. Information verification period. Buyer shall have 10 days after mutual acceptance to verify all information provided from seller or listing broker. If as a seller, you're marking that out and you're saying no buyer, you don't have 10 days to do the information verification, you're actually causing yourself harm as the seller because you're not allowing the buyer the time to do their due diligence and make sure that everything is correct. So then if you eliminate it and then the seller goes in, or and then the buyer sues because they find something out after closing, the judge, sorry, my brain's a little bit gone. The judge is gonna first look and say, well, Mr. Seller, did you give the buyer the amount of time or proper amount of time to verify this information? And if you marked it out, then that could be an issue because you didn't give them any time to look at it, right? So keep that in mind.
So what sort of documents, I mean, what are you verifying? If you have an inspection contingency or other, like a title contingency in place, are there, and then you've got a specific thing on the seller's disclosure, what exactly are they trying to verify?
So you're verifying square footage, you're verifying lot size, you're verifying, I don't know, number of bedrooms. You're verifying whatever is in there, right?
Okay.
School districts.
The school district, that's another good one. Yeah, you're verifying that information. Most times, the information verification period is marked off if you're not doing an inspection, right? So technically inspection, they probably would say you have the time to do it. So most times this doesn't really matter because if they have the inspection, then don't touch the information verification period because they're both 10 days. It is what it is. If there's no inspection and you mark off the information verification period, that could be where the issue is. Now, you can't just randomly get out of a deal based on the information verification period. There has to be something that you're getting out based on the material, because it says buyer gives notice identifying the materially inaccurate information within 10 days of mutual acceptance. Now, what's material? Again, that's probably going to be a judge. If square footage says it's 10,500 square feet, and you find out it's 10,300 square feet, is that materially accurate, inaccurate? It's 200 square feet in a 10,000 square foot house. Now,
Hey, square footage is money.
it is money, but 10,000 square feet with 200 square feet plus or minus, that's not going to be that big of a difference.
It's
Now,
gonna change the value of your home. You
not,
just now
not by
lost
that much, not a 10,000 square foot house.
Well, yes, indeed.
No, not that much. A 10,000 square foot house, 200 square feet is not going to be that big of a difference.
It's
Now-
gonna change your dollar per square footage amount. So that is losing value to your home.
For an office, yeah.
But it's not going to be as big of a difference as if it's 1,000 square foot house and you're plus or minus 200 or 300 square feet. That's a difference.
It's around the area.
I think it should be applied the same way.
15 by 15.
200
And I
square
feel
feet.
like
You're
a
never going to
judge would
notice 200 square feet in a 10,000 square foot house.
Yeah, but
You're
that's
not
my
going to notice it.
I
My
feel like
knowledge is important.
because they're so particular about their money that they're gonna be like, no, I want what I'm paying for.
Right. I mean, maybe you could get away with it, but I'm just saying, like that, the difference between 200 square feet in a 1,000 square foot house versus a 10,000 square foot house is a lot.
Yes, that's a great. 20%.
It's a lot.
So does the information verification period part there tie in with like Form 22D, the optional clauses where you would put in like buyer is supposed to check square footage and stuff like that? So,
Yeah.
like they kind of go hand in
Yeah.
hand. in a way?
Yeah. They go hand in hand.
Why would someone cross that out?
Yeah, I've never seen somebody.
They cross it out because they think that a buyer can get out for any reason whatsoever.
That's what they.
And materially inaccurate. If I get my square footage from an appraiser, because I bought the house 3 years ago and I put the square footage on there based on the appraisal, and the assessor's page says that it's less or different, that's not materially inaccurate, right? Because I'm using,
Material.
yeah, I'm using something that somebody actually said was in there. Um,
Now, if the appraiser accidentally put in the wrong price, does that go onto the appraiser or, I mean, how does that work?
that's where what Seth was just saying on the optional clauses, that's where that number comes in that says that, it's the buyer's responsibility. Sorry, guys, I gotta plug my computer in real quick. It's the buyer's responsibility to verify. And the reason to do this is mainly the assessor can sometimes speak like way wrong. I've seen it. We have an extension cord plugged into an extension cord. That's
Easy chain. I have one of those.
that's
Up to code.
yeah.
As long as one of them has a little.
We'll see if we catch fire. Um, so just make sure. I'm getting a look from Sarah. Sorry, guys. So just make sure that as the listing agent, you're not crossing that off because that can be super dangerous. The financing contingency, remember, I think I talked about this once, that you can check more than one box. So if you're getting that down payment assistance loan, make sure you check the FHA loan that you're getting and an other loan. So you check the FHA and other and say that you're getting the down payment assistance in there. Does that make sense? Most of you guys have heard me say that before.
Okay, I didn't know. that. I didn't know that the down payment.
Do you want me to
assistance-
pull up the 22A so you can see what I'm talking
I know
about?
what you're talking about, the box, well, I know.
Yeah, do you guys know what I'm talking about when I say that? Most of you guys have heard me say that.
I just didn't realize the down payment was a different, I thought it was tied to the FHA, so when you check FHA.
So it's two different approvals. So you get approved for the FHA and then you get approved for the down payment. So if you don't get approval for the down payment, then that means you can't get the FHA loan. So they're tied together, but they're two different approval processes.
Got it.
And the reason that, remember, because back in the day, I'd always tell you guys to put it on the evidence of funds. The evidence of funds can't get you out of a contract if you can't get approved for the down payment assistance. So we don't put it on there anymore. We put it on the financing addendum because if you can't get approval, then you can get out based on the financing addendum.
Okay.
Okay. Do you guys know about? Okay, nope, we have 2 minutes. I can't get through it that fast. On the financing addendum about turning in the termination, the seller's termination. So we'll go over that next week. And then I think you guys were pretty close to being done. So I would say in the next 2 weeks or so, we'll go over my checklist again. Emily asked for it. My
I
checklist.
did.
Is there anybody else that asked for it?
I would say yes.
I don't think
If you
anybody
don't
else
have
on
it,
here has asked for it. In the next 2 or 3 weeks, we're gonna go over that. I will give you all fair notice that we're doing it. Because remember, I do not give out the checklist until I can go over it with you. So before I do it, I'll make sure that we can get through the paperwork that I have. And then I'll announce it like that week that I'll say next week, we're going over those checklists. And I'll announce it on the sales rally too.